Alrighty then, I've brought this up before and this type of video was made a long time ago, but that was literally 4 years ago, so I figure it's time to make an updated video. I do get asked often by new players or simply those who want to get into jungling and increase their jungle portfolio. Stonewall, who should I buy? The thing is that the way that Riot handles IP makes it difficult to purchase champions at a reasonable pace, especially if you're starting out. Worse yet, junglers are some of the more dependent champions in the game since they can be ousted from the jungle against bad matchups, bad team composition, and are simply unable to jungle because you don't have the necessary runes for them. With this list, I will detail which junglers are worthwhile investments as they will cover a ton of ground, require only a bit of IP to receive tons of potential return, have tons of options towards when they can be played, therefore are rarely not an option, and they can make transitioning to other junglers, both gameplay and IP wise, far easier. The first one on the list is Fiddlesticks. He gets a spot on this list despite being limited in his in-game goals, mostly because of how cheap he is to even get started jungling. His total IP cost is literally just $13.50. That's just to buy him and then you can jungle. He doesn't even need armor runes, which are basically staple on all junglers. It's no lie that Fiddlesticks does greatly improve with runes, but his drain is so blatantly overpowered at keeping him alive in the jungle that you could pretty much jungle naked as long as you waltz around the jungle properly. He's probably the only jungler you could buy and just play immediately. It also really helps that Fiddlesticks is a ridiculously strong snowballer and very brutal with and against most team compositions, pending they don't have tons of displacement or the means of keeping track of him. It also really helps that he's a jungler that is insanely strong in lower divisions and stays relevant all the way to Challenger. His worst quality is that he's clunky and has an unusual playstyle to the point that he doesn't really teach you to expand into other junglers, but at the very least he's such a minor IP investment that you can free up your IP for other stuff after purchasing him. Since he doesn't really need runes, that means you can equip him with whatever runes you have at hand, even some that aren't really appropriate, or equip him with whatever runes you're purchasing for another purpose. He is occasionally a decent laner, but rarely so. This means if he's purchased, he's mostly a jungle investment and can't multitask for other options beyond it. Now, I'm sure many of you weren't even expecting this, but Rumble has been impressing people of late, including myself. It was a couple of months ago that Riot boosted his ability to jungle, and slowly but surely, people are starting to pick him up. I've tried jungling with him with multiple runes and masteries and found that he could basically jungle with anything, even some of the less optimum ones. Almost like Fiddlesticks, he is close to being a naked jungler in that he needs nothing to start jungling. I strongly recommend armor runes, but beyond that, you can slap on anything you have lying around. What's good is that even physical runes like attack speed or attack damage can actually help him out, even if it's just a little bit, since he spends a lot of time punching things occasionally. In fact, the first rune build I tried with him used attack speed reds, cooldown reduction blues and quints to abuse his shield for clearing, and I had a lot of success. Too much cooldown on him isn't necessary, but I was experimenting at the time. He's very quasi in a lot of things. He's a quasi initiator, he's a quasi bruiser, he's a quasi mage, so he's a bit of everything. For those who don't know what that means, quasi means you're partly something. He has initiation, but he's not the best. He's tanky, but not the tankiest. And so on, but he's all at once. That's actually quite a bit of value. It makes him safe to pick in almost any moment because he serves to amplify what you already have rather than detract from it. Of course, if you're severely lacking something that he can't completely make up for it, only sort of pad the situation. He has a steep initial cost of IP for sure, but he can almost always be picked without harming your team and adds the rare mage from the jungle aspect to your portfolio of junglers. He's also an adequate top laner and can be used for that position too if you ever need to. The worst trait perhaps is that his playstyle is more akin to sustain mages and there aren't many of them in the jungle, so what he lets you branch out to is rather limited. Of course, the main man Jarvan has to be here. If I hadn't made it clear over the years, he is renowned in the game for being insanely versatile to the point where he can cover basically everything. The nerfs several seasons back did harm him a lot, but that was because Riot had to quell his overwhelming value. Even then, he occasionally pops back up when assassins and brutal ganking is required. Jarvan is a bit different to the ones I already mentioned in that he does have a heftier initial investment, but his returns are much broader than the rest. He needs armor runes like other junglers, but he also needs some offensive physical runes. He can use attack speed, armor pen, or attack damage, which are the cheapest, but he needs some in order to effectively clear and actually fight other champions. Despite having a higher cost than the others, his sheer versatility allows his value to explode. He can be picked for pretty much any team composition composition even as something as ridiculous as a pure AD composition, since he grants his team attack speed and his Q shreds armor. Essentially, there is never a moment where you can't pick him. Sure, in some metas he's not the best, but even in those, Jarvan can still crush opponents. He can be played as an initiator, an aggro early ganker, a fighter, a bruiser, a quasi-assassin, and an aura carrier. To make matters even better, he's one of the few junglers in the game that can still alter his build mid-game easily and adapt to the game without harming himself too much. This is mostly because of how much inherent value his kit already has that he is given so much flexibility, and this is why Riot has had difficulties keeping him truly balanced. As I mentioned, Jarvan needs offensive runes to jungle adequately enough, but he can use whichever you have at hand. If you're already equipping another physical jungler with runes, then this can kill two birds with one stone. Jarvan's super versatility also allows him to encompass tons of playstyles and allows you to branch out into tons of different junglers as well. The most relatable ones being Xin Zhao and Vi, but there are plenty of others. In a way, Jarvan is also an amazing investment because he teaches you tons of things and opens up the way to expand your portfolio tremendously. Gragas is an insanely versatile champion, even more versatile than Jarvan at this point. Basically, everything I said about Jarvan applies to Gragas with a less initial IP cost and less of a rune burden. Gragas' weakness over Jarvan is that he has less fighter builds, but more than makes up for that in the overwhelming amount of tanky builds he can pursue, while also being able to branch out into numerous magic builds. He only really needs armor runes, but any runes you do equip with him amplify his jungling tremendously and open up new build and role potential for him. With only armor runes, he's a tank jungler with strong disruption, bodyguard potential, and a very unique form of initiation, while also being very mobile, decent at clearing, and ridiculously safe. He's strong at all stages of the game and can adapt his role and build midway through the game to respond to whatever situation is at hand. Think of it this way, his rune requirements are so low, yet he can achieve so much with so little. Investing even more into him makes him even better and multiplies your investment value in him while also building towards other champions. He's such a great starter jungler that will let you wisely branch out with your IP and will definitely teach you how to play most other tanks and even plenty of mages. He would have been number one if it wasn't for the fact that someone cheaper exists. That being said, Gragas also likely has the most long-lasting potential to stay relevant despite the meta shifting. He's strong in all divisions, he's relevant in pretty much all metas, and can be picked safely into most team compositions. There is basically no reason not to obtain him as he only greatly adds to your portfolio. I was initially a bit iffy at putting Amumu at number 1, but the more I thought of it, the more it just made sense. See, he's a very straightforward champion and he's not as versatile as Gragas or Jarvan, nor is he as rune-free as Fiddlesticks or Rumble, but he's such a cheap overall investment while being a straight up one of the easiest junglers to play with some of the longest lasting value of all champions. Amumu cost a pitiful amount of IP to even purchase, to the point that acquiring him with the necessary armor runes cost the same as getting Fiddlesticks. That alone means you've obtained a strong jungler while preparing to build towards other junglers with their armor runes. Amumu is then blessed with the same thing as Gragas in that he only needs armor runes to operate, but the runes you do equip him with alter his potential tremendously. You can go pure unkillable Amumu tank or holy hand grenade Amumu by going full AP to instantly blow up teams. You can go pure cooldown reduction to be an initiating monster, mobility to be efficient, and so on and so forth. His weakness is that he's pretty much just an initiator or an explosive burst machine, but considering how strong that is in solo queue, that's totally fine. He's a champion that is known to be super deadly in lower divisions and can stay relevant as you rise through the ranks. He's notorious for having an oddly high win rate despite not having been competitive in a long time. Basically, Bandage Fetus Baby has such a pitiful level of initial investment there is no reason not to have him considering how much he adds to your jungle portfolio. He does mostly only teach you to branch out into other initiators and some burst champions, but that's totally fine. You can literally buy him after 3 games and equip him with the cheapest runes possible and still do fine. So for those of you who are looking to increase the amount of junglers you have or start your list from scratch, I implore you to consider the ones that were on this list. Like I said, they are easy to get started with, they branch out onto others both gameplay and rune wise, and they can teach you a lot. With how gated IP is, improper investment can set you back a lot. This channel is supported by my sponsors, Crunchyroll and Loot Crate. Check out the description below for links to the websites. Signing up for any trials, including Crunchyroll's free anime trial, greatly supports my channel. Also remember to give the video a like to support the channel and subscribe if you haven't yet. I've also made a Patreon now, and if you wish to support me through that medium, then I welcome it.